This solo episode is designed to give you the background and the basics of the Manifestor Energy Type. So if you yourself are a manifestor, if you love a manifestor, or if you have a manifestor in your life, then this episode is for you. So let's get into it. Manifestors are one of 5 different energy types in human design. And when we think about energy types, they are sort of akin to a zodiac sign. So if somebody asks you what your sign is for astrology and you say Cancer, people often ask you what's your human design. And one of the things that you might say is what your energy type is. And what they're referring to is how your energy functions in the world, how it interacts with other people, and your aura. When we think about your aura, we're talking about that 6-foot energy field that sort of extends out from you. And there are different types of auras, different flavors, different feels of people. And manifestors are one of those. Manifestors are about 8 to 10% of the population. So it's a relatively rare type. A lot of times it can feel a little bit like people don't get you. I hear that from a lot of manifestors when they first learn that this is their energy type. It sort of makes sense to them like, oh, okay. So let's talk a little bit about that aura. It's described as being closed and repelling. And while at first that may sound like, oh, I don't want that kind of aura, or that doesn't sound great, it's actually meant to protect you. So I think of a manifestor aura much like, if you're watching, I've got my rubber ball here. And I like thinking of a manifestor aura like that because it repels, yes, but it also does allow the right people and the right energy for a manifestor to get through. So it's not necessarily impenetrable, but it definitely is a very powerful energy. When a manifestor walks into the room, you know it. It's the type of person that draws your attention. You know, you would tend to look to the entrance when a manifestor is coming in, just because you can feel that presence. That strong aura also makes it so that sometimes it can be difficult to tell what's really going on with them. The reason that manifestors need this protection goes back to the idea of them being just 9 to 10% of the population. It's like they don't have people who really understand them. And plus also, they're not here to be understood. They're not here to fall in line. Manifestors are here to initiate. They are here to initiate change and transformation. And because they are like the fire starters of the world, they can't be, asking for permission, because what happens is if you have a manifestor that's asking for permission, or, hey, does this idea sound good to you? A lot of times you're going to, as a manifestor, get this like blank stare or this feeling of, I don't quite get that. Like, what are you talking about? Because the ideas that you have as manifestors, these visions, this creative juice is new. It's unusual, perhaps, or unrecognizable. And so when you're talking to the other energy types and sharing with them your thoughts or ideas, sometimes people just aren't going to get it. And that's okay. As a manifestor, I think that's one of the most empowering things that you can understand about yourself, is that you're not designed to ask for permission. You're really here to start things and to initiate as well as innovate. Understanding that is a huge permission slip for you to just go forth and do the thing. The other piece that comes into that, which will help you in dealing with the other types, is the manifestor, what's called strategy, which is basically how do we function in the world? How do we take action in the world? And the manifestor strategy is all about informing. So notice it is informing, though. It's not asking. For example, if a manifestor has an idea, is ready to act on it, instead of just jumping into it whole hog, take a moment and inform people around you. I like to describe this for people who feel like it feels pretty unnatural and uncomfortable as narrating your life. And yes, this very much puts you in the spotlight as like the star of your life. And you are. So there's a bit of you that does need to get comfortable with that, because the more you inform the people around you, the easier your path of innovation will be for you. So if you've got this great idea and you start telling people about it, then whatever they have to say about it is really not your concern. That sounds interesting, or that's weird, or I don't know if that's going to work out. You've done your job by informing them. Now it's your turn to just take action versus asking them for feedback. It's really not about asking again for permission or asking what they think necessarily. It's more like, hey, I've got this great idea. I'm going to take action on it. I'm going to go do it. Just letting you know. Okay. And this really works well down to the tiniest of things. Like if you are in a room, for example, at work, and you're about to go somewhere, and perhaps you are not the person in charge in the situation, even just letting your coworkers know that you're going to step out for a bit will leave them settled in a way that if you didn't let them know, there's a feeling of dis-ease, like, there's something missing. Remember, going back to that idea of this really powerful aura that you have, we can feel it when you exit the room. So it's important for you to think about your life as this constant narration. And the more you practice, the better you'll get. And the more the people in your life will start to understand that this is how you help them to work with your energy type. So there's definitely an intensity to manifestors, at least in my experience and with the ones I've known. They do tend to be pretty intense people. They do have that strong aura. And I think it's a question for you as a manifestor as to where you want to direct that energy, which is important to consider, because another thing to note about your energy type is that you do not have a sacral definition. You don't have like an internal battery that's powering you to get all of this innovation done. Really, if you take a step back and think about all of the energy types together, manifestors are here to initiate and get the ball rolling. They're not necessarily here to take it across the finish line, though. Like, they work best when they have support to help them take things across the finish line, So things like delegating are really helpful and can be game changers for manifestors to understand as a way to support themselves, because they don't have that nonstop battery power. And, a lot of times these ideas that they have, they take a little staying power. So something important to know about yourself. Another thing, because of the way that this aura is strong and somewhat repelling, it does tend to make manifestors pretty independent. So being able to speak up for yourself, being able to advocate for time alone, and just being able to be the loudest one in the room if you want to be, or the one who gets things going and kind of goes off on her own, is like a beautiful part of life for you as a manifestor. You've got this direct line sort of to the universe through something called urges. And these are essentially ideas that come to you. And when you're thinking about your urges and you're thinking about these ideas that come to you and which ones to act on, that's where you want to use your authority. That's where you want to use that decision-making power within, which I will talk about in future episodes. But this urge is a very special thing for manifestors, and it can come in a variety of different ways. It's something that you really just need to experiment with to start to understand about yourself and how that works. And when I talk with some of the manifestors that I'll be having on the type series, well, that's one of the things we'll talk about is how does an urge feel and what is your experience with those? So you'll have some examples to draw from. Another thing I wanted to talk about is this idea of not self and signature. And essentially what that is about in human design is when you are in your not self, you are literally being who you are not. You are acting as if contrary to your design. And when that happens for a manifestor, anger is the emotion that you will feel. And I like to think of these emotions as road signs. It's nothing to judge yourself about, it's more a redirect. Like, oh, okay, I'm feeling angry. So, where maybe did I not inform? Where did I come out of alignment? Where did I go wrong here? And just to sort of retrace your steps and then redirect yourself toward your signature, which is basically this is the emotion you feel when you are in alignment. And that for manifestors is peace. So I like to coach manifestors to think about peace and anger when they're planning their day or when they're, thinking about a creative urge that they have. What is going to bring you closer to peace? If you have a slew of things in front of you, a whole bunch of ideas and a long to-do list, think about what is going to bring you peace and move toward that. The anger can also happen oftentimes when manifestors get interrupted. This is sort of a classic calling card for the manifestor type. When you're going crazy on your urge and you're in the creative zone and then you get interrupted, that anger can be a real, it can be a bear. So knowing that about yourself and trying to set up the right situations for yourself so that you can actually work on what it is that you want to work on, or you can set aside time that will be uninterrupted. So I wanted to talk briefly about parenting as a manifestor, because part of what I aim to do on this pod is to help you be the mother that you came here to be as well. Some of the things that I've mentioned already, I just want to put into context of being a manifestor mama. So, for example, informing, the idea of having your children in the same room and you leaving the room, just make sure to tell them, hey, I'm going to the bathroom, or I'm taking a trip to the grocery store. I'll be back in 20. Do you guys need anything? That type of thing, just informing and carving out time for yourself as a manifestor mama, super, super important, especially with that non-sacral, that need for rest and rejuvenation is super important. I think this is important for any type, but knowing your children's designs and their energy type can also be a game changer. Understanding that the way that you function when you're one-on-one with one of your children is and will be different than how you all function together as a family, because the energy shifts a bit when more than two people come together. And so just understanding your kids' types, like if you are a manifestor mama and you have sacral beings for children, if you have generators or manifesting generators, then that's good to know. And it's good to know to talk to your partner about it, to just say, I do not have this built-in battery power. And this is one thing that I haven't mentioned yet, which is that manifestors work in cycles. You'll notice that there will be different cycles that you experience. It does take, I think, a little bit of practice understanding what this cycle looks like for each of you personally, but understanding where are you in that cycle of work and energy. And if you're still menstruating, then that cycle may very well inform and dictate your energy, how you're feeling throughout the month. And when you're no longer menstruating, it might be more, moon cycles or whatever, but it would be a good thing to start to record that, start to write it down, and then just knowing that information, that self-awareness can really help you show up as the mother that you want to be. When your energy is a little bit lower, and being able to advocate for yourself, like, you know what, I need a nap today, or I need some alone time. And also not using it as an excuse, I guess. Human design is meant to be a system of self-awareness, and I would say self-empowerment. And plus, also, it's not an excuse. I wouldn't use it to manipulate and say, well, I need this every day. And especially if you're married to another non-sacral, just figuring out ways to work within the confines of your designs, and understanding and respecting one another, I think, is really important. So helping your children understand that mom's going to be doing this, I'll be finished at 2:00, and please do not interrupt me in this time. That would be important. I think that would feel really nurturing for you and supportive for you. And it will help your children because you are informing them. So just some tips. If you have a manifestor child, one thing I will say is autonomy is super, super important. The more autonomy and independence you can give them, the better, because remember, manifestors aren't really here to ask for permission. So as a child, that can be really challenging. So what could you offer a manifestor in the way of his or her own autonomy and ability to call the shots? I also wanted to talk about work as a manifestor, because in midlife, oftentimes we're looking for other career paths, or, potentially shaking things up in the workplace. And knowing these things about how you work and how your energy is supported can be another game changer for you. I mentioned autonomy, and I think this is one of the most important components to remember about yourself when you're looking for work, especially if you're going to be working for somebody else, is the level of autonomy that you need is high. You're really here to call the shots. You are here to start the thing. And so I think it's important for you to be able to have that creative time, to be able to work cyclically, to be able to really honor where you're coming from. As a manifestor at work, the more that you can inform and let your coworkers know what you're up to, the smoother the path is going to be for you. Also, going back to that idea of delegating, because you are a non-sacral, as much as you can delegate, once you get your idea in motion, people understand it, then learning how to ask for help, learning how to delegate will be really important for you and supportive of your energy for sure. And the idea of working in cycles, I think this is where it gets a little tricky when you're working for corporate or for a company or a school or whatever. And obviously there are cycles that are established throughout the year, probably by that organization. And plus, also, how can you honor your own cycle when it fits into that container? And I think this is really just about advocating for yourself and understanding where you are in your cycle and what you can still offer at each point in that cycle. So this is a brief overview of what manifestors are all about, how your energy works, and I hope it was helpful. I think that the more that you understand about yourself as a manifestor, and the more that you understand about manifestors in general, because we all know them, even though they're a small part of the population, the better off we are in knowing how to negotiate that energy and work with it ourselves. So thank you for tuning in. And as I sign off, I wish you the strength to let your baggage go, the inspiration to remember who the hell you are, and the courage to be who you came here to be. Thanks for tuning in.